Hey, Russell, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kate, Russell here. Happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have this conversation. And I actually want to start, Russell, with something that you put on LinkedIn promoting the fact that you were going to be on this show. And you wrote on there that when you were doing your goals in 2021, one of the goals that you set was to build enough credibility so that you can qualify and apply to be on the Innovating Advice show. So I really want to start with that point because when I reached out to you to have you on the show, you had no idea that you've actually been on my radar for months. We just had the podcast went into hiatus, but I've seen you speaking on all kinds of things. You've built this incredible brand. You're doing lots of cool stuff. So I want to first chat. What is that magical thing that you felt you had to do or achieve in order to, you know, apply or chat to me about being a guest on the show?
Okay, great. Yeah, like I said as well, I'm so grateful and thankful to you for having me on the show. And a good morning, a good evening to like all our South African listeners. Good morning, good day to all our overseas listeners as well. And to be honest, like Kate, you won't believe it. Like your show is so phenomenal and like looked up to by a lot of South African financial professionals, and not just on a local level, but I would say on an international level as well. And for me, I've been following your show since the early days. I think since almost episode one with Clayton Daniels from XY Advisor, and a good
Yeah.
friend and colleague recommended that episode to me, and I was like, wow, like there's actually people out there that are trying new things, and I'm not the only one. And I think it also leads to the whole concept of, and a lot of us are going through it now, especially with COVID, is like the whole imposter syndrome, and
Oh,
especially
yeah.
for a young person. I'm sure it affects everyone else, but we as human beings are so used to feeling like the moment we are achieving something, we feel like, am I worthy of that success? And, do I really deserve it? And I'll be honest, that's pretty much what I've also gone through in my career and also in my life, is when you start achieving milestones, you start thinking like, okay, I need to do X, Y, Z, and then I should meet this criteria to be, qualified or eligible enough to be on
Yeah.
the show. And I think that's why for me a big thing was like, as a young person, because I saw the phenomenal guests that you've had on to date, I was like, I need to do something amazing to get onto Kate's show, that's never been done before. And ironically, that's why I'm still shook to this day. When you messaged me on LinkedIn and you said like, "Hey Russell, you look, you've been on my radio for a while now, and I would like you to come on my show and share your story." And I was like blown away. I'm
Yeah.
still, in shock at this moment.
Well, and that's a big part of what we're going to chat about is, I guess, we didn't even think about it until 2 minutes before we kicked off the show, but a lot of it does come down to imposter syndrome. And for longtime listeners of the show, hopefully you've gathered that I actually am always trying to find those rising stars. And whether you're young or it's just that next gen mindset, but people that are thinking and doing differently. And there are a lot of people that make the rounds on podcasts. I've had some of those people reach out wanting to be on the show. But I kind of want to find those gems like you, Russell, and the fact that you have been thinking and doing differently from day one, which we're going to be talking about. I want to encourage anybody out there listening to, come and share what you've been doing. And I promise you, what you've been doing is cooler and bigger and better than you give yourself credit for because we are so hard on ourselves. And, when I launched the show from day one, I've been committed to having 50% women. And I've mentioned this before, but the amount of conversations I've had with amazing women that have that imposter syndrome and think, I haven't done something big enough, like you said, Russell, I need to do something really big. And that's not it. Just being who you are, thinking the way you do, and acting the way you do, that is so much more than enough. So I would love if anybody else has on their radar that they'd like to be a guest on the show, reach out. Let's get that scheduled. Let's make it happen.
No, definitely. And I think it's so true, that you mentioned about that whole imposter syndrome. And, looking back of like where I started, okay, I'm still a real young person within the industry. I've only been in the industry for 7 years. And for those that don't know me since way back then, I was actually an introvert before. So despite a lot of people saying, "Oh, you're so sociable, you have good people skills," I didn't used to be like that. I used to be so shy and scared to interact with people. And when I started in the industry, I used to work out for, I went the, traditional route. I studied financial planning, did my postgrad, and then I did my, my articles and also my internship at Old Mutual, which is quite a reputable, well-known insurance house in South Africa. And
Yeah.
I was actually just invited on to an internship, and I thought, I went into the workplace and I saw how everyone was doing things. And 9 times out of 10, even to this day, I think people are still doing it, most of our advisors, is that when I started there, they said, okay, well, now you're going to have to look for clients or prospects, as we call it. Here's a phone book. And this was obviously before, social media blew up. So they gave me a phone book and they said, like, start calling to get clients or contacts. And I was like, what? Like, I had never called a stranger on the phone ever in my life. And
Yeah.
now on top of that, I'm an introvert, so I don't have people skills. And I was like stressing my head off. I was thinking like, how am I going to communicate with these people? And
Yeah.
I tried it for a week and I hated it, to be honest. And eventually I would say that, and that's probably one of the biggest pros that came out of my experience starting there, is that in my internship, just to give you guys a bit of context, it was only a 6 month internship and I only had to come in once a month. But because of my upbringing and my parents, they taught me like, look, Russell, if you really want it and you really want to give it your all, treat it like a full-time job. Go in every morning
Yeah.
and, learn from the people around you. Learn from your colleagues, a lot of the things that they don't teach you in varsity through the books and things like that. And that's what I did. And, I started picking up that everyone else was calling clients through the telephone book. And probably by the time I called, all those people in the telephone book, they had been called, 100 times as well by other advisors. And I started thinking, I spent more time at the office and I started thinking, if I was a client, right?
Yeah.
How would I like to be approached? First and foremost, I wouldn't like a stranger
Not
calling me
like
on the
that.
phone. Because, like, you don't know me from a bar soap, but you want to come talk to me about my finances. That's like
Yeah.
really intimate stuff. I'm not even friends with you, but you want to talk to me about my finances. And I thought, there's gotta be a better way of doing these things. And I eventually came up with the idea of, and I happened to see a bridal expo. So just for those that don't know, an expo is like a conference or it's like
Yeah.
a event on a weekend. And we would have all these expos within, Port Elizabeth, where it would be a bridal expo, a kids expo, a family expo, a Home Depot expo. And it was basically just a event or a weekend when you have all these exhibitors selling stuff related to weddings, kids, family, houses, and things like that. And I thought, you know what, right? If I want to deal with a financial advisor on a phone or a financial planner, I would like to actually physically see this person that's calling me so I can like see, okay, I've got a face to a name to a voice that's calling you on the phone. And I
Sure.
thought, Russell, like this is going to shock you, but like let's just try and do this. And I thought, I'm going to go and set up a store at my own cost, right? So bear in mind, full intern, I'm not really getting paid much. I'm getting paid about 2,000 Rand a month. That's very little in South Africa. And at my own cost, I'm like, I'm going to go set up a store, nothing related to financial advice or financial products. And it's going to be a chocolate fountain or a lucky draw. And the two benefits of why I'm doing it is so that anyone that passes me by, I can make conversation with them, get to know them. And on top of that, kind of, just break the ice and hopefully, meet some people that could be potential prospects.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I was so scared for that first weekend. I'll be honest with you, because I was like, Russell, you've never done events. You're going to go stand at this event where there's hundreds of people passing through by yourself at your own cost. So worst case scenario, if you don't
As
get
an
anything out of
introvert.
this, as an introvert, you just throwing yourself out there, literally into the
Yeah.
ocean.
That's amazing.
and and I thought, like, you know what, Russell, worst case scenario, you fail. But then at least you know what works and what doesn't work. And you can also then find out and learn lessons like, okay, this doesn't work. I can do this better and keep trying.
Yeah.
And on top of
Yeah.
that, you start building people skills. You learn to talk to people. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened. So my first experience with doing my first expo was a bridal expo. And did you not, like, my plan to break the ice with prospects? I would dress up according to the theme of that expo. So with the wedding expo or bride expo, I would dress up in a tux like a groom. So that when I talk to clients or when I talk to passers-by, and it would never be anything about product, it would be about things in the news, like the budget speech or something with our economy, just to get the conversation going. My whole plan was that the next day when I follow up with those individuals, I'll say, "Hey, I was Russell. Hi, I'm Russell. I was the Chinese guy in the tuxedo at the Bride Expo. You might remember me." And they'll be like, they'll crack out
Yes.
laughing over the phone. They'll be like, "How can I not forget you? Yeah, you were like at the expo, and you were the only one that dressed up as a groom, And
Yeah.
that immediately changes the whole contact from being a cold contact to now it's a warm lead. And because we have some form of report and they've met me, they trust me, they see me, and I'm like a friendly person, 9 times out of 10, my hit ratio was quite high where they said, "You know what, come by to my house, or can I come and see you? Yeah, let's definitely look at my finances." And that's where it went, and years after years, that's kind of like how I got along my clients and how I kind of shifted my mindset to like, no one else is doing this. So why not try it? And you learn and take something away from it at the end of the day.
Yeah, that is incredible. So where did you get that initial idea? Because that's what's so hard is you look around and it's easy to think everything has been done. There are so many innovative people out there that have tried all these different things, but you came upon an opportunity and you were like, nobody's done it. Did you think, why has nobody done it? Or were you just
Yeah,
like, I'm
like
going to go do it?
I'll be honest, like, this is back in the day before like social media. Now I really feel old, but like before social media became such a hype thing. But I was literally paging through the newspaper and I was like, oh, there's an expo this weekend. And I was just thinking, like, too bad. Initially, my first thought was like, too bad there's nothing to do with finance, but maybe there's a way I can just try and set up a stand and talk to them. And when I
Yeah.
took this idea to marketing after I did it the first few times, they were blown away. Like, so you went to this expo, you spent 1,000 rand. So out of my 2,000 rand salary, you spent 1,000 rand, up to 1,000 rand, buying all the gifts, hiring a chocolate fountain, and then buying your spot or your store there. And you've been doing this? And they were shocked. They were like, no one's done this.
Yeah.
And they have a marketing budget. And they're like, how come you haven't come to us with this idea? And they thought it was a fantastic idea. And I would say the biggest benefit I got out of it, aside from clients, more importantly, I learned how to build up my confidence and talking to people. And it just kept on developing and innovating year after year. I kept on thinking of like, okay, if I'm going to do expo this year, what can I do differently? How can I change the scene? How can I be different from last year?
Yeah.
And eventually it got to the point where I started one of my first side hustles back then. I eventually thought, you know what? I've been going to all these expos, and yes, it's awesome and nice people, but there is no clients or prospects that are in my niche, which is I want to deal with young professionals.
Mm.
And I thought, why don't you run? I thought about the crazy idea. Why don't you run your own expo? Like literally
Really?
put your own expo together. And I
Yeah.
was like, why are you giving yourself all this extra work? Like literally, you're not paid to do this, but you gotta go and do this anyways. And it's at your own cost. And I eventually put together this marketing plan. I took it to marketing and they were like, wow, this is actually like really good. I started reaching out to like all my friends from varsity. And it just so happens a lot of them that were studying law, medicine, engineering, accounting, all these other different fields. Just so happens that they are on the boards of all these professional societies. And took me further out of the comfort zone because aside from having to learn how to pitch a non-tangible idea to sponsors, not just O Mutual as a group, but I had to pitch it to
Yeah.
like Audi, you know, Ferrero Rocher, which is a chocolate company, and all
Oh
these
yeah.
other companies as well for the theme. It was really like I was jumping out of my comfort zone because, yeah, I'm back again. I'm an introvert, and now I'm learning how to pitch a non tangible idea to these people with the hope that they can sponsor me funds to put this event together. And
How did you
we
how
did
did
it
you
for
learn those
three.
skills? Did you have like a specific person that was helping you with that, or was it trial and error?
So literally, it was trial and error. I'll be honest. I didn't have
Okay.
anyone
Yeah.
that taught me about event planning or anything like that. I was just like, okay, I'll put it down on paper, and okay, so how do I do this? And I went out asking marketing for tips. They gave me some tips, but not a lot of insight. And then I just kind of ran and winged it, to a certain degree, and developed it over time. It became an awesome event. We had like the first year we had like 300 professionals, And
Wow.
it was everything that the people wanted. I told them from the get go, like, this is not going to be a 6 hour conference where you're going to sit and listen to someone speak. We are
Yeah.
literally creating an engagement environment where you can meet influential people in your field, people that are doing more things than what their occupation is on paper. And for the sponsors, that was also kind of my value add to them. I'm like, I'm giving you access to your right clientele that you want to pitch your product or your service to. Because you guys were setting up all these stands in the shopping malls, and 9 times out of 10, maybe only 10% of the foot traffic are the
Yep.
actual people that can buy your product, especially Audi, like with all their sports cars and so forth. It's like you want the high clientele. And we kept on changing the event, ran it for 3 years. It went really well. And then we kind of just niched it further. And yeah, it was a good run. I would say I developed a lot of good relationships. And after that, I was like, okay, I can talk to people now. So I'm not so shy anymore.
Well, and I like the idea that, well, first of all, I love the chocolate theme throughout everything. I just have to say, I've got a real big appreciation for that. It's chocolate fountains and Ferrero Rocher. But the idea that you're going to all these other companies, and again, that's thinking outside the box, right? You're not just
Mm,
thinking about financial products or bringing in other financial experts to just talk about financial stuff all the time. You're going into what are the things that they need or want in their life outside of this to make it a more broad-based event. So all of that kind of thinking is amazing. And again, we need to emphasize that you started doing all of this from day one when all you had was a 6 month, basically unpaid internship where you only had to go into the office one day a month.
yeah.
And you were
I
like,
think
I'm gonna make something amazing out of this.
Yeah, I mean, I thinking back now, I just laugh about it because my parents used to say to me, I was pitching to sponsors and event coordinators and like all these individuals and societies. I was doing it after hours and on the weekends, and my parents were just like, I hope all mutuals paying you well, because like you're doing so much work. Like in your contract, it literally says come in once a month, but you go into the office 7 in the morning and you're coming back home 8 o'clock at night. You're the last one to leave the office. We did say
Wow.
work hard, but we didn't expect you to work this hard. And I think that was like the crazy thing because, coming out of it as well, aside from building good relationships, the big niche or the big takeaway was also, and this was kind of my long term idea, was that I've put this amazing event together for you guys to, benefit as the attendees. And I'm hoping I'm giving you an experience. I'm not giving you products or services. I'm positioning this
Yeah.
potential experience that you could have as a client and this potential lifestyle that you want to build. And I'm hoping that you come to me to help manage your finances so we can help build that lifestyle and that experience
Yes.
that you want.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
that's incredible. And that's so spot on because then people also think, the whole idea of, okay, how do I just give value without selling? And it's a tough line to walk. And there are a lot of people that if you're
Mm.
giving value, they will only take the free stuff. Humans, that's human nature. But I love that you were like, not only am I not going to be pitching you, I'm going to show you that that's actually more of what we're going to focus on is building the life that you want. And then we'll talk about money second.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, from my experience, and it's always been that approach from like day one, is I've learned, and it's a common concept I always use when I talk to colleagues about it, is like you have to learn how to fill up the goodwill bank account. We as
Mm,
humans, whether it's with our
yeah.
peers, clients, or whatever, the first mistake, and I also used to make the mistake in the beginning, first mistake we do is that when we approach others and we want something, we ask them for something without giving anything in return. And the problem is that you haven't added any form of value, whether it's a client or a colleague or a peer, or a fellow networker within your field or within the industry. You haven't added any value to them whatsoever. And now you want them to give something to you without you adding any value to them. And I learned that early on. I think that's always been my approach. And I've been fortunate and blessed to say I've never had to sell any form of product or push any form of product or service on a client. It's always been my way has always been, even with the expos where I learned, is like, I'm here to educate you and coach and empower you. And
Yeah.
my hope is that hopefully you come back to me for further financial advice. And my idea or my plan there was like, I'm building goodwill with this client so that they can see what value I can add as a person to their lives. In addition to that, What I also started doing, I was adding value or trying to build goodwill bank account with my peers and colleagues in the industry with the hope to build relationships, good relationships, so I can learn and share with them as well.
Well, and with all the expos and everything, the fact that you're creating that experience, going back to when you first started and you were handed a phone book and you're like, hey, call the same person that's already been called 100 times. If that's the experience that a lot of these prospects have received, then when they get your experience of these amazing expos that are targeted to the lifestyle that they want to build, naturally you're going to come top mind when it comes to wanting to do financial planning and get financial advice. But you have had a mentor as well throughout this, and that's another great story of taking a small opportunity and turning it into a big win-win value add, getting into that goodwill bank account that you were just talking about.
Yeah, 100%. And it's one of the things that I'm really so thankful and grateful for, because it's definitely shaped my approach to like the advice industry, was that just so happens within that first year of internship, just to also give your audience up to speed, within 3 months, because I had worked so hard and I was so committed, they eventually also offered and said, look, we've given you a 6 month contract initially, but how would you like to be permanently employed? So that first came, they were like,
Nice.
gave me a permanent contract. I was like, wow, and
So the
my
hard
salary
work
went
paid
up a
off.
bit.
That's a good
Hard
lesson
work paid
there.
off.
Yeah.
And
And
then
I just
secondly,
want to also point out there though that you made sure to show them your hard work, because that's another challenge
mm,
that happens whether you're introvert or you're young or whatever it is. We can often think, hey, if we put in a lot of hard work, it's just going to be recognized and we will get appropriately promoted for that. But that honestly doesn't always happen. People are super busy. They've got a lot going on. So the fact that you did actually go to the marketing department, you pitched them, you showed them what you were doing, you did actually take the steps to make sure that you stood out.
yeah, 100%. And I would say, to be honest, that wasn't my initial intention, right? It just so happens within that 6 month internship, I didn't intend for it to happen that way. But during those weeks, every Monday would be a manager meeting. So it would be all the managers in that office and the regional manager. And every time, I guess that's also where I got the mentorship or got recommended for the mentorship. Every time they would come out of their meeting at 7 o'clock, eventually got to a point where they were saying, Russell, like, why are you still here? Like, you're the only one here. Why are you still at the office? It's 7 o'clock at night. You should be at home. And my initial response is, I'm preparing for the day tomorrow so that I have less things to do and I can just implement from the morning and I don't have any hassles. And just so happens, like I said, it wasn't my intention, but I was blessed and fortunate enough that, over the next 3 to 4 months, I suddenly got a call from the regional manager, and he first said to me, like, Russell, can you come and see me in my office? And the first thing I started thinking was like, oh, shucks, like, I've been doing my job properly. Am I in trouble? Like, I've been working hard.
Uh-oh.
Please don't fire me or anything like that. And I came into his office and he said, Russell, every Monday when I come out of my manager meeting with all the managers, you're always here, right? And you're not even paid to be here, but you come and work here and you plan for the day. And I haven't seen that with the other 100 employees in this office. And he said to me, you know what? I've actually, without you realizing it, I hope you don't mind. I've actually spoken to one of the top senior financial planners, in the country for mutual, and he's here in PE. And he takes on mentees, he's had mentees before, but I said, this guy, Russell, that stays in office, he's really going to be a really good candidate for you. And without realizing it, within the next few weeks, they introduced me to this mentor of mine, and he changed my whole perspective on financial advice. His name's Glenn, and one of the most well-known and successful financial planners within, I'll say, mutual within the country. And he said to me straight, he said, like, nice to meet you. I've had mentees before. Look, we're going to start with a 30-minute session every Friday. I'm not going to prepare anything. It's your responsibility to come here to the meeting and prepare something that we're going to talk about. Don't come and ask me in this meeting like,
Yeah.
oh, let's just chat. I want you to actually make a concerted effort to, really come up with something that we can discuss that's constructive and that, we could use in our practices and when we deal with clients. So, and yeah, on top of that, to make it matters worse or add more pressure, it's like I've had 10 mentees before. And within a month to 2 months, I eventually said, look, this is not working. You're wasting my time. Please go. So he told me, like, look, Rasa, I don't have much high expectation. I've heard good things about you. I'm hoping you can live up to those expectations. So what I eventually did, I was like, you know what? This mentorship is priceless. Like no amount of money can actually accumulate or custom for the amount of value I'm going to get out of this. And this is a guy that's been highly successful. He deals with high net worth corporates and family clients where R1 million in South African terms is like nothing to him because he deals with so much money and so much high net worth clients and problems. And I said,
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure that he remembers or knows who I am. So what I used to do is that every weekend for the following week, and we would have our mentor session on Fridays, I'll prepare in the days leading up to that. I'll research and look at, okay, what's causing trends in South Africa and overseas within the advice industry or problems for clients, and I'll bring it up to him in our discussions. And just doing that, you know, both it was supposed to be just a 6 month mentorship. It turned into a 3 year, relationship. And it went past just a mentorship program. He was like, you can come and work here. It's not part of the mentorship program, but I want you to be in my office and like learn with me. And went from a 30-minute session every Friday to like an hour session every morning, Monday to Friday.
That's
And
incredible.
we got so close that, he would take me, which I love. And this is what varsity, you can't get in varsity or college. He would take me to all his client meetings or most of his client meetings. Obviously, I'll sign a confidentiality letter with the client. And they'll explain to me, Russell, this is the situation before we meet the client. You say, Russell, this is the situation. And then when we have the meeting with client, says, okay, Mr. So-and-so, I've explained the situation to my mentee, Russell. Yeah. Russell, what do you think we should do to solve this problem? Right. And I'll be like, okay, you could look at it from a tax point. This is how I would structure things. And it had nothing to do with product whatsoever. It was pure advice and problem solving for the client, which once again, they don't teach you that in varsity or college.
Yeah.
And after that, like he would say, okay, that's good. I would do this X, Y, and Z on top of it. And that's how I learned so much for part of my foundation, which I have today. And, we still keep in really good contact. But after 3 years, he said to me, Russell, why don't you go and become an independent financial planner? I want you to learn more because you've hit the ceiling of growth now. But you can definitely still come and talk to me whenever you want.
Yeah, and that's so cool that he empowered you in those meetings. And then I like how you said he would say, I did that and then add on it. So there was no,
Mm,
contradicting you, which further empowers you and, presents a really nice united front to the clients. And that's just another great story of kind of taking this small opportunity and being like, no, I'm going to take advantage of it. And how amazing is it? And
yeah.
unfortunate, honestly, to hear of all the people that came before you that didn't take advantage of that opportunity and didn't see it. And again, that just highlights there's so many opportunities to stand out and do things differently and think differently. So, in our last minute or two, Russell, what advice would you have for people? It doesn't matter if they're young, they're new to the profession, they're going through a rut, whatever it is, but especially those introverts out there or people struggling with imposter syndrome, coming from where you did in the beginning. And I will say, I don't totally advocate the workaholic part. That definitely helped, but there's a fine line there. I think it definitely paid off in the end. But what advice would you have for people to take these opportunities, seize them, and create incredible opportunities?
Yeah, 100%. And thanks for that. Yeah, I think definitely on the whole workaholic thing, like what I learned over time is that you don't have to work so many hours, work smarter, and always don't
Yes.
be afraid to try anything new. A big thing with me is that, and I'll share this with all you guys, like we said in the beginning, I also had imposter syndrome. I was like second guessing myself. I was like, you just some young lighty or young person. Who are you to come up with these ideas? And like I said earlier, don't be afraid to try anything. Worst case scenario, okay, it flops, but then you learn something from it. So you're failing forward in that sense. And at least you know what works. And don't be afraid to try stuff outside the norm. A lot of people and colleagues within our industry, and this goes to, young planners or planners of all ages, is that we are so worried about what everyone else is going to say about, our ideas or our thoughts, right? That we don't want to try anything and we stay within our comfort zone and we don't grow. So I would always say, like, don't be afraid to try things. You can learn so much. And other than that, keep trying forward and, always think in the client shoes. Think like, okay, don't think about like how I would like it as a planner. Think about from the perspective of like, how would like my clients see it and experience it and
Yeah.
how much would they see value in that? And that's the approach I would give to any planner. thinking about trying things or thinking about entering the industry or positioning themselves to differently to the client, put yourself in the client's shoes and think like, how would they experience or, find this experience with me?
Yeah, absolutely. And on the note about kind of failure, I've seen a lot of really great speakers over the years, and a lot of them have stories of sometimes really tremendous failure. And so I always remind myself of that. It's like, even if you fail, honestly, it just ends up making a really great story. And that's a really great way of, advising other people. If you've gotten great advice and you want to pay it forward, unfortunately, one of the best ways to do that is be like, well, I tried that. That didn't work. Like, I've gone
Hmm.
through it, versus getting however many decades down the line and knowing that you never really tried anything and played it safe. So, Russell, thank you for being here. And I love that it was on your list of 2021 goals. But again, anyone else, if that happens to be on your list, reach out. We will get you on the podcast. Let's knock that imposter syndrome down. Know that all of us are doing incredible things, and just keep it up, Russell. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Kate. And thanks to everyone for listening in. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.